Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Get ready for truth bombs, belly laughs, and the kind of accent that turns car into a two-syllable adventure. Here's your host, Sean.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the SHR Media Network. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining me on the 17th. The 17th of September, 2025. It's been a week since Charlie Kirk was assassinated in Orem, Utah. It's incredible to think that a singular incident could have such an impact on the change in the country. The amount of people that exposed themselves in the last week of just being vile, horrible human beings is astronomical to me. The amount of people that got themselves fired, talk about another one, the more famous one that I'm sure everyone is already aware of, is mind-blowing to me. But also the amount of good that has come out of it, the amount of unity, the amount of caring, the amount of sweetness, all of that has come out of it from such a horrible event has also been pretty astounding as well. I'm going to make some adjustments here. There we go. Jersey Joe's in chat. Let me start at the top and work our way down. Before we get into topics, of course, the Phantom was first. Ricky Robinson from KLRN, where we are simulcast. Make sure you check them out as well. Thank you so much, Rick, for being here and being a friend of ours. If you're watching this on anything but YouTube, though, and you want to get into the chat room, I'm reading you and I'm putting up on screen. You can do that. Just go to YouTube, search SHR Media. You'll see the circle. We're live. You can click on it. The chat room, boom, right there. That was me proclaiming to be first, even though I wasn't. You know, it always blows my mind that it's my show. I start the chat room, and I can't ever be first, it would seem. Canada Heavy Haul, who is also first in the chat. Thank you, sir. Mission Ready Men's in the chat. Thank you so much. Unpleasant Blind Guy. Neither unpleasant, but he is blind. Thank you so much. Yeah, Cosmic Bard shows up. BZ's here. The whole Jersey Joe's here. Everybody's showing up tonight. It's going to be outstanding. Ordy's here. And of course, Ordy's always number one. Of course, always number one. It's just, there's no other way about it. Ordy is number one. You'll notice I got this awesome sign. And it says SHR Media, the Edge of Liberty. It has my logo in the middle. And I was really excited for it. And then I tested it, and the lowest setting of the light is so bright, it drowns out my entire camera. So I got to figure out a way. I know there's a way to adjust it, the amount of power that goes into it. But yeah, it was so much nice. Oh, Manitoba Farmers in the chat room. Thank you so much, Manitoba Farmer. Yes, the Phantom reminded me we're up to 620 subscribers. No reason why that number cannot go up while we're speaking. Mike Pasqua's in the chat room. Thank you, Mike. Wow, everybody's in the chat room. Thank you, guys. Everyone's living their best life. Cosmic Bard, The Lost Wonder, whatever you want to call him. He also has a show that we're glad to be able to simulcast for him on Sunday evenings at 5 p.m. right here on SHR Media YouTube. 9 volt, he says, to adjust the light. Man, you know, And I was all excited. I got a great deal on it. It looks great. The company that did a great job. Like, it was awesome. And when I first tested the lighting on the lowest setting, I'm like, oh, that shouldn't drown it out. That should be all right. But nope. Nope. You wouldn't even be able to see me, which actually, you know what? Most of you all would probably appreciate. Yeah, please hit the like and share button. So I'm going to start off with good news, because I'll tell you something. We don't get a lot. We haven't gotten a ton of it recently. President Trump, I am pleased to inform our many USA patriots that I am designated Antifa, a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster. I love that. As a major terrorist threat organization, yes. I will also be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices. Thank you for attention on this matter. Look, ladies and gentlemen, I had no intention. He dumped this, 45 minutes ago, just before I went on the air, maybe a little bit longer than that. Antifa does play into the role of the Charlie Kirk assassination, and maybe not directly, but what they've done to this country and what Antifa has done, and it stands for anti-fascist, which just means pro-communist. It essentially, anything that is not entirely communist, they call fascist. That's what they've wanted to do. And has never once done anything positive in this country. And I will say that from Summer of Love, BLM. I mean, just listen to some of these starting in 2017. And I'll just start in 2017. 200 arrests on Inauguration Day in Washington, D.C., Berkeley, California, also in 2017. Protesting, I believe, political commentators who were on campus, 71 arrests, 13 arrests at the Proud Boys rally, 970 total arrests citywide over protests, 74 face federal charges. Portland, Oregon, recently in 2025, you had other people arrested. And that's just the arrest log. That doesn't go through the people that weren't arrested. That doesn't go through the damage that was done. We know how many cases got kicked under Biden for the attack on the federal buildings in Portland. It's just astronomical. And their whole goal is not, look, there's a reason you don't negotiate with terrorists, and Antifa are terrorists. You either do what we say, act how we want you to act, support what we want you to support, or terror will come your way. Now, it's incredibly different how these groups are from 20 years ago, but not from, say, 50 years ago, when the leftists are in the 70s and the 60s, where the leftist groups were out of control, and you had so many militant leftist organizations. And we're going to talk about that a little bit too here, as some other militant leftist organizations that have that were using outright violence. What was it? 72, Weather Underground bombed the U.S. Capitol building. They talk about January 6th, but they don't ever bring that up, right? Antifa has attacked so many innocent people, not politicians, journalists, just citizens walking by. Never mind the amount of attacks on cops that's been done. This is a step in the right direction. And look, as I said, Antifa does not give a shit about this country, the Constitution, and the path this country is on. And this brings up my whole argument with the response of the left since the Charlie Kirk assassination. You see, there are two sides to what's going on here. Yeah. Weather Underground, there was direct pipelines to Newsom, Obama, and to LA as we speak, I believe. There's two sides to this. What's going on in this country? It's not hard. It's not a difficult thing. They want to make it so complex, and they want to make it difficult. Well, you're missing this and you're missing that. No. There are the people who accept that however imperfect we are as a nation, this is a great nation. This is a wonderful nation. Our founders knew what the hell they were doing. And this is our country, the way it was designed, not how it was designed. We've gone off the rail in a lot of places, i.e. the Fed and some others. But the point is, we have a core that we are a free capitalist society where people are free to say and do what they want in their private lives. You can nobody gives a damn who you bang, really. I mean, at the end of the day, as long as you're not bothering anyone, we are a great nation. There are issues, but we are a great nation. And then you have the other side of that coin, and it is the people who want to take all of those wonderful things that this country has done, focus only on the mistakes that it has made, use the wealth, the foundation, and the infrastructure to take the country and put it in a direction it was never intended to go, i.e. socialism, communism. That's what it comes down to. They use all these social pickings to enrage each side. And I'm talking about social media and the accusations, and they are now leading to more and more violence. By the way, I said, on other people's show, but you want to talk about the left's rhetoric, and they're all mad. Oh, Trump's the leader and he should tone it down, which never happened under Biden. Biden never toned down shit. As a matter of fact, he kept going, and all of his minions kept doing the same. And the same people that were doing it a week ago that are now saying the rhetoric should have been toned down are using the same rhetoric, fascists, Nazis, etc. And it all was trial and tested under the Tea Party. That's when they crossed the line from politics as usual. Yeah, it was the uniparty, but we weren't trying to murder each other. Go figure. We had some issues. And as I wrote on a really long X speech a couple days ago, that's where we turned the corner. The Democrats were so in fear of the Tea Party for the fiscal aspect alone and what they might expose, which now we see USAID and what Doge exposed, and you're like, oh. And as soon as the Tea Party started to get some prominence, they went after them. They called them Nazis. They called them terrorists. They called them fascists. They called them everything in the book. Go back and watch. Go back and read. That's where it really started. That's where it went from I appreciate what the gentleman from West Virginia said. However, I disagree, and this is why. No. Then it became, you fascists over there trying to stop us from giving money to trans newts in the middle of Botswana. You're all Nazis. You all deserve to die. We got to take to their streets. We got to get into their faces. This is war. That's what it's turned into. In a span of what? 15 years? 17 years? And once it worked with the Tea Party, once they figured it out, and they said, oh, people are emotionally responding to this. Let's run with it, kids. And you have the political climate that's here today. And I said, part of the frustration for the conservatives was at the Republicans themselves, because they laid down and they took it for years from the left. Get along to get along. We gave in constantly. Get along to get along, right? And then we had enough. And we started demanding accountability from our own side first. And we started voting different. And who we voted for was different. We started looking for the outsiders because we knew the Uniparty was just going to destroy us. And that's when they started to up the ante. And then all of a sudden, Antifa, who I know was operating in Europe for a long time, we should have known more about them, but we didn't. And in some ways, I don't give a flying fuck about Europe. And I'm not saying that to be an ass. I have seen so many people posting things about Europe and Europe and Europe. Yeah, I get it. They got a ton of problems over there. But you know what? We got a shit fuck ton of problems here too. And yeah, we have to deal with them. England is a hot mess. France is a hot mess. All these countries are a hot mess. They need to figure their shit out. I feel for the citizens over there. Don't get me wrong, but we're kind of a hot mess too right now. And we are a country who are on the precipice, I believe, of going in one direction or another. people are actually going to grow up, which, as I've said, we've seen a lot of it in social media, the youth walking away from Democrats. And now the next step is start identifying where this money's coming from for these un-American fucks that walk around our cities and claim to be Americans. You never see them with American flags on them. As much as you may not like some of the conservative groups that hang out, at least they're conservative. They're Americans. They care about this country, even if they're misguided in their approach. And I don't agree with a lot of them, right? There are a lot of groups out there I just don't jive with, but at least I know that they're trying in their own way to preserve this nation. That's not who Antifa is. That's not who Antifa was. Antifa was never about this country. Antifa was about communism, plain and simple. Antifa was about undoing who we are and becoming something that we should not be. Dave said our problem started over there. It's to a point, but we did it to ourselves. I don't believe, I get what you're saying, but I don't think that we're a one world nation. We allowed this to happen by voting for people that believed we were a one nation world, I should say. We didn't protect the homeland. Plain and simple. For a long time, we did not protect the homeland. And now we're a week away from a 31-year-old speaker, political speaker, motivator, if you will. Somebody who inspired and encouraged and did it with a smile and engaged with people who hated him in a polite way to try to keep discourse as the focus and not, as he said, when conversations stop, that's when the violence starts. And I think this country is starting to, I don't think we're there yet, starting to realize the importance of that. And starting to realize that, and I'm talking about the people, the politicians, the people on media. Look, the 19% that support the Democrats are the ultra leftist, progressive, socialist left, plain and simple. Right? So you're not going to change their mind. I'm talking about the average person, the person who is maybe a centrist, because they realize that in a lot of ways, Charlie Kirk was the most centrist and passive of all of us. Yeah, he spoke a lot. He said a lot of amazing and awesome, inspiring things, but he was polite. He was kind in how he did it. He was kind in how he interacted. Even if you don't like his message, how he presented it was not in a mean way. He was the polite one out of the group. And the problem is you now have to deal with the rest of us who are not going to be as polite. It's disgusting that even a week later, you still have people making false, unbelievably false claims, just incredibly false claims. You have that idiot, what was it he was from ABC, right? I had the clip somewhere, I can't find it, where he's reading the text messages that the Utah DA read out. And he's talking about how this really sounds like just a guy who's in love and trying to humanize him. Right. Is the same people who says for targeting congressional districts dangerous. Yeah. No, Mike, you're right. Look, these are the same people who, when Sarah Palin said that she could see Russia from her doorstep, attacked her for it, when in fact she could see Russia from her doorstep. Like, it's not like the amount of gaslighting that the left has done to their followers. You go to Jimmy Kimmel being suspended and potentially fired. It looks like he's going to be suspended. That was tonight, right? That just happened. Now, look, you had this happen on Benny's show there, on the Benny show.
To be one of the
FCC chairs, the head of the FCC. Watch the first 2 minutes of this, and then I want to talk about the response of everybody. I said watch the first two. There we go. Now everyone's playing along.
When you look at the conduct that has taken place by Jimmy Kimmel, it appears to be some of the sickest conduct possible. As you've indicated, there are avenues here for the FCC. So there are some ways in which I need to be a little bit careful, because we could be called ultimately to be a judge on some of these claims that come up. But I don't think this is an isolated incident. I mean, you go back to Representative Swalwell, and he had a tweet out last week where he was saying that emphasizing that Charlie Kirk's killer was a straight white male from a Republican family that voted for Donald Trump. In some quarters, there's a very concerted effort to try to lie to the American people
Yes.
about the nature, as you indicate, of one of the most significant, newsworthy public interest acts that we've seen in a long time. And what appears to be an action by Jimmy Kimmel to play into that narrative that this was somehow a MAGA or Republican motivated person. If that's what happened here with his conduct, that is really, really sick. And I've been very clear from the moment that I have become chairman of the FCC, I want to reinvigorate the public interest. And what people don't understand is that the broadcasters, and you've gotten this right, are entirely different than people that use other forms of communication. They have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest.
Did you hear that part? That FCC license that ABC, NBC, CBS, they all have. There's an obligation to operate in the public interest. In other words, for the better of the country, not the worse. That's not saying they can't have a difference of agreement. But when you say something so over the top, like Kimmel did, trying to blame, even though information was coming out that he was way wrong, unbelievably wrong, that's not the best interest of the American people, because you're lying. I would even argue that you're trying to incite people with that statement. He called us a MAGA gang. He didn't even call us MAGA. And I couldn't find it. I looked at all the times that he said MAGA. I've never heard of MAGA gang coming out of his mouth before. So he chose those words specifically. And the writers, the producers, all the people that are supposed to check his copy went along with it. Okay. There's a difference between saying, I haven't seen enough information to believe that this was politically left motivated, however lying that may be, and people aren't being honest with themselves because they're so emotionally caught into, I have to hold on to this on the left really, really hard. I have to carry the torch because that's what's expected out of me. That they can't be even momentarily honest about anything until it's proven beyond anything that they're wrong, and then they just ignore it and move on. That's not in the best interest of the country. And when you're operating on an FCC license, you have to follow rules. Now, all of that being said, there was no violation issued by the FCC as the time that Kimmel was fired. Now, people are going to point to this comment. It's coming up here in a second.
We can get into some ways that we've been trying to reinvigorate the public interest and some changes that we've seen. But frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or, there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
That was not, and they're trying to say, oh, he was threatening him. He's threatening ABC. I mean, he's not. It's the government shutting down Jimmy Kimmel. Or do those writers? Yeah, going through the chat. Sorry, guys, I'm ranting tonight. That wasn't a threat to ABC. That wasn't silencing Jimmy Kimmel. What that's saying was, you need to make sure that while your people can say things, that it's not insightful, that it's not wrong, that it is not and by wrong, I mean criminal, right? Everyone saw the Pam Bondi, the other thing where she's talking about hate speech and blah, 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 blah. And she's wrong. People can say hate speech all they want in their private lives. But when you're in the public domain, right? The people that either are operating X or Facebook or the network that you're on or the job that you work at may not like what you say and hold you accountable. That doesn't mean you can't say it. It just means that they don't have to employ you after you say it. Plain and simple. They don't have to. They're not mandated to. And those in the military who are saying things that got fired or getting fired or whatever, you had even less rights. And anybody who is in the military knows that. this speech from the FCC chair here is not a threat. It is a reality. Hey, look, this happened. We're going to look into it and make sure that there was no violation of their federal license that we require them to have and they pay us for, and their rules and stipulations, just like your driver's license. You can't drive drunk in any state in the union. It's not allowed. And if you get pulled over and there's a slight hint of alcohol in your breath, guess what? They're probably going to do FSTs to determine whether or not you are intoxicated. And then if you are, then you're going to be handcuffed and arrested and charged, right? That's the way it works. And there'll be breath tests and they'll draw your blood, whatever. But what he was saying is, we're going to look into this to see if there was a violation, because this was so egregious and it shocked the conscience of the people watching and America in general, that we just want to make sure that it's done right. Now, if everyone says, oh, that was the big threat, look, let's be honest about a couple things. Jersey Joe says, being reported that Erica Kirk has filed a lawsuit against ABC. Good. I hope so. But as I was saying, not even in Arkansas, when you work for, and BZ brought up Joy Reid. Yeah, they got rid of Joy Reid. They didn't get rid of Joy Reid because her numbers were awesome and they just didn't have anywhere to fit her. They got rid of her because the same way they get rid of everyone else. You're not making enough money for the organization. You're not worth the effort and the struggle, right? So we're going to get rid of you. I said on X, and I fully believe that ABC found their out. I don't think Kimmel's up for his contract 25-26 at the end of the season. $15 million a year on a show that some reports say they break even, some reports say they lose money, right? So ABC went, this is a great opportunity for us to unload this salary. It's almost like when you see professional sports team, one of their players acts a fool and they cut them, right? They find that clause in the contract and they cut them to save the money. Because like, no, this isn't worth our time, effort, and money. A lot of people are saying, oh, this was a threat. Look, ABC, like all of these other networks, has a fleet of fucking lawyers that knows the FCC rules inside and out. If they, and I'm sure a lot of them used to work at the FCC, if we're being entirely honest, we know how that grift goes. If they did not think that Kimmel violated anything in the FCC and he was worth keeping around because he made enough money, he would still have a job. Plain and simple. When you get into these organizations, you realize most of their stuff is to mitigate lawsuits because that's what costs them the most money. Look, ABC paid out in Stephanopoulos. A lot of people say, well, they should have fought it. They wouldn't have made it past discovery. Okay, but their team of 100 lawyers said, we're probably going to be fucked if we don't sit here and pay this out. So we're going to pay it out. The same thing just happened here. You see, if you ever do any sort of risk analysis, and I know there's a whole chart out there I can't remember the name of, high risk versus high reward, low risk, low reward. And I know BZ is going to throw it out here in the chat room in about 18 seconds. I can't remember what it is. But that is what the lawyers at ABC did with Jimmy Kimmel. They looked at the risk versus the reward. The risk is very high. The reward is very low. Why would you keep him around? Right? And you got to remember too, Kimmel was suspended back in 2014 when he was talking about, I think it was Detroit versus LA. And if LA wins, Detroit's going to burn. And he said something like, oh, it's not worth burning or something like that. And he got suspended for it. The same type of thing where he said something that was so egregious that the network turned around and said, yeah, you're going to take a couple days off and think about what you did. Gordon Graham. Yeah, the Gordon Graham chart, right? Anyone who does risk analysis has used that in one fashion or another. And that's what happened here. Oh, you want to talk about the liberals who forced firings? Jersey Joe was asking about Eric Bolling back in the day on Fox News. That's the beginning. I mean, you really look at how many people look at the Me Too movement. How many careers did that end? Right, wrong, or indifferent, right? The difference is with cancel culture, they were digging up stuff that was said 20 years ago. And then they were turning around and they were digging up stuff. Well, time and place was different 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I tell everyone, you don't think so? Look up on Saturday Night Live on YouTube, look up Richard Pryor, Chevy Chase, the janitor. That aired live on TV, right? But now that wouldn't fly. Blazing Saddles and the other ones. We've talked about this all the time. But that's what cancel culture did. Cancel culture went back in people's times and held them accountable for something that at the time was not a shock or wasn't harmful. And then what they did is they demanded people be fired. And places did it. And you know what? As much as I hated cancel culture on the idea that you're going to go back 25 years and ruin somebody's life, I never said that these places of business couldn't fire people. I know they can. You're an at-will employee in almost every state, and even the ones that you're not, it's easy to fire. California, you're an at-will state. It's really, really hard to fire somebody and not win a judgment for unemployment. You know why? Because even though you're at will, just about anything, any reason whatsoever, the judge is going to give you unemployment. So, yeah, that's another one. Paula Deen, right? We can go down the list. And some were kids that didn't know any better. Mission Ready Men, thank you, sir, for saying that. I agree. Jersey Joe with the Paula Deen comment. Again, yeah, it was just a different time and a different place. But this was in the now. This wasn't Jimmy Kimmel in blackface on The Man Show, which he never got canceled for. He had to give a fake apology. I'm really sorry I did that, guys. But he didn't get canceled. Why? Because he's a useful idiot for the left. He was 100% on the good guy squad now. So they were okay with it. They made him bend the knee a little bit. And it was a funny bit back in the day. Nobody was offended. He was making fun of Karl Malone. And it wasn't towards all people who are black. It was towards Karl Malone specifically, right? And it was just a goofy, silly bit. But they canceled him. Or they didn't cancel him, but they canceled everybody else. And you'll notice it's funny because, yeah, Justin Trudeau got away with blackface. What's her name on The View got away with it, right? Because they're useful idiots. They're part of the okay crowd. The communists approved them, so they protected them. What Jimmy Kimmel said this week was nothing like that. It was a direct scumbag, horrible statement at worst, or at best. And at worst, it could have been insightful, right? What happens now if some leftist kills another conservative and you see that clip saved somewhere in their phone? Do you turn around and say, well, Jimmy Kimmel incited that because he said they're a MAGA gang? What do we know about gangs? Gangs are bad, and that triggered this kid. And I'm not saying Joy Behar, thank you, that's her name. I try not to think about her. I'm not saying that's a real life occurrence, but it's something you have to think about. But they don't think about it. They'll never think about it. It's never going to be what's important, because what's important to them is to have us all at each other's throats 24/7. And then you have
despicable, disgusting.
Their spin on this, that this is somehow a fascist thing and that they're taking away First Amendment rights. And this is how they start with the press and blah, 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 blah. But then you have people like this idiot who says this.
Your reaction to this?
It is outrageous. It's a page right out of Xi's playbook.
Communist, Xi.
This is just despicable, disgusting, and against democratic values.
Against democratic values. So thinking about what he just said, lying about who assassinated Charlie Kirk and blaming the MAGA gang is against democratic values. That's firing them, holding them accountable, I should say, for saying that. That's against democratic values. Not what he said going against democratic values, where you're blaming over half the country for something that you know that wasn't true. No. Being held accountable goes against democratic values. But please, you wrinkled old fuck, continue.
Trump and his allies seem to want to shut down speech that they don't like to hear. That is not what democracies do.
That's so funny that Chuck would say that. It's amazing to me that Chuck would say that, because how many J6ers didn't get a chance to speak? How many of them were held for an extended period of time and did not have a trial? That wasn't very. Where were you against that? How are you only against anything that happens, and how are you only for free speech and due process and all these things that are actually in the Constitution when it's fucking convenient for you? And it's simple. They don't give a fuck about it. They only give a fuck about the outrage. That's what this whole speech is.
That is what autocracies do.
Uh-huh.
And it doesn't matter whether you agree with Kimmel or not. He has the right to free speech. And so it is just outrageous. It is indicative of autocracy. And I am just outraged by it. Again, this is what dictators do. This is what Xi would do. This is what Putin would do.
Yep,
we are not that country.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. We need to stop the rhetoric. You can disagree with the firing. You can even blame the FCC without dropping all the key phrases, but they can't fucking help themselves. They cannot correct the course. It's amazing to me that you have an opportunity, and this is how fucking jaded they are in their brain. You have an opportunity to go out right now and say, look, I disagree with what the FCC chair said. That's fair. I also don't think that ABC should have fired them, but they're a private business and I can't control that. Okay. I think what Jimmy Kimmel said was horrible and he shouldn't have said it. Okay. You can make all three of those points without calling Xi, Putin, autocracies, dictatorships, but they can't, and they're not going to. The politicians and the talking heads aren't. And then as we're talking about this and all like the violence that's being encouraged by the left, there are other stories who they just completely get skipped over and they act like none of this ever happened. Here's this one. There it is. This is Amaya Akenaman, who was charged with terrorism and mass shooting event by electronic device, and she was arrested. She was arrested because she went online and threatened to do a mass shooting at a Charlie Kirk vigil. Right? This was posted 4 hours ago. They're still not correcting their course, and that's still happening. Amy Curtis, now at Red State, who used to be over with our friends at KLRN, she pointed out a few years ago, New York Post was banned from social media for accurately reporting about Hunter Biden's laptop. Donald Trump was kicked off Facebook and Twitter. And might I add, nobody responded. Nobody responded. Well, 2 years before you have a prelim talk about J6, yeah. Jersey Joe, is it okay for President Biden to force restriction of free speech on social media? Absolutely. The FBI was directly involved with social media. Unpleasant Black Guy. Democrats have values like Dracula was a vegetarian. Yes, absolutely. And I also want to point out, too, we talk about free speech and freedom of the press and all this other stuff. Under Obama, sorry, not O'Biden, even though that's kind of funny. Under Obama, there was a plan that got nixed because people found out about it and lost their shit, for the FCC to implement a monitor in every newsroom in the country to monitor what was going to be said over the FCC airwaves, approve and disapprove stories. Now, they figured it out all by themselves, how to make sure that out of 90% of the newsrooms in this country, leftist bullshit flows out like a tsunami of leftist diarrhea. But that was the plan to start that. And then they're like, well, we'll just get people in there we'll just get people hired and then we'll just have them do it and it'll be fine. Which is why media is how it is today. There's no objectionable reporting outside of a handful of people anymore. Hardly any at the big news outlets. And no matter what, it's going to get worse before it gets better. ABC station across the U.S., by the way, and a good news, and I know I missed my break, and I probably just won't take one tonight. this is good news. Sinclair will be airing, Sinclair TV, who has a lot of ABC stations, will be airing Charlie Kirk tribute during Jimmy Kimmel's spot Friday night, which I think is classy and it's nice. And it's a good way to say, hey, we didn't approve of that. So it's going to get worse, folks, from the leadership and from the left. And the people who have microphones, and you go on social media. And by the way, if you go on TikTok, the amount of foreign bot accounts that are just repeating these lies are astronomical and unbelievable. And somebody called me a fascist earlier when I said ABC can fire who they want. And I just laughed at that because I'm like, no, ABC can fire. That doesn't make me a fascist. That's a reality. They can fire who they want. David Portnoy from Barstool says, with Kimmel getting canned, I've seen lots of people talking about the hypocrisy of cancel culture. To me, cancel culture is when people go out of their way to dig up old tweets, videos, or etc., looking for dirt on somebody they don't like in an effort to get them fired. Like if Kimmel got canceled for shit he did on the Man Show, that would be cancel culture. But when a person says something that a ton of people find offensive, rude, dumb, and in real time, and then that person is punished for it, that is not cancel culture. Those are the consequences of your actions. I couldn't have said it any more clear. So it's another huge story. So we all heard, and I don't even have my we all heard the charges being brought against the suspect, and I don't want to say his name, in the Charlie Kirk assassination. We heard the text messages back and forth, the ones that ABC fawned over because it was like some sort of Romeo and Romeo story or whatever. And then SK Double Dub on X, who I follow, got together with Data Republican, and they started going into some of the organizations, the gay, queer, armed queers of SLC, and a couple other ones, and started digging up on them because I'm sure at some point there's going to be a connection. Hasn't been announced yet, but it's really early. And I want you to look up Data Republican on X, SK Double Dub as well. I want you to go over and look them up on X and look at what they've unearthed about the armed queer Salt Lake City chapter. It's absolutely incredible. I'm going to read some of it to you. The State Department and UN ties to armed queers SLC leader is now confirmed. First credit to SK Double Dub for the crucial tip. Please follow. Armed queers SLC is under investigation for possible foreknowledge of Charlie Kirk's assassination. That's step one. So they had some idea, or at least they believe they had some idea that it was going to happen. Their leader, Ermaya Fanayan, and I may have gotten the name wrong, was recognized by the State Department affiliate NGO Utah Global Diplomacy as a recipient of the 7 for 17 award in advancing UN 17 goals. Utah Global Democracy has since scrubbed her presence from their websites, unknown when this purge happened. Moving on. This is what pops up, and she shows you the scrubbing. She does a really good job of going into these websites and finding the archives and stuff like that. And she was an organizer for the Armed Queer Salt Lake City chapter. The protest, this is a quote from one of their sites. The protest was put on by Students for Democratic Society in response to presentation organized by the Young Americans for Freedom, a right-wing student organization with Turning Point. The entrance was guarded by at least 10 cops with several more waiting inside the building and allowed. And this is for another event, not the day of the shooting, I believe. The current anti-trans movement will not be is not about protecting women and children. The right's current fixation for attacking and exterminating the LGBT community is a scapegoat to distract from the public of what's really going on around us, said student organizer Adrian Romero. Armaya Fanayan, an organizer with the Armed Queers of Salt Lake, stated the struggle for queer and trans liberation is far from over and is a struggle that cannot be stopped by the state. It can be not stopped by the university, and it certainly cannot be stopped by right-wing events and organization. Today we fight for trans rights so that tomorrow we can stand with trans power. So she is heavily involved. And then she starts breaking down the 990 forms, which are the forms to register with the State Department, and she starts breaking down the amount of money that was being sent and where this money was come from. And then she finds out through all of this that this Fanasian was in Cuba working with the the Castro administration or the Cuban government about organizing, right? So now you have and they were given money to her apparently. So now you have a foreign entity involved, and it goes on and on. And if you go through and you read all of this, she even, like I said, articulates what's scrubbed from the web now and what's still out there. There's pictures of this girl, this Fanasian girl. I don't know if it is a girl or not, but with what's her name there? Pocahontas, right, on stage with her at an event. This woman, this Fanasian person, who's tied into the Democrats enormously. They're getting money from the UN and the State Department enormously. So when you look at Trump's declaration of Antifa today, and we all know Antifa and the trans community work hand in hand, Antifa is the violent arm of all of these leftist organizations. It may not be organized. They may not have cards. They may not go through meetings, but they are the violent arm. They're the brown shirts for the leftist organizations like this, right? You've seen it. You know it. I'm not making this up. There's thousands of hours of video of it. And the question's going to be how these two infiltrate each other and how they work together. And where's that money coming from? And where's that money going to? And who is trained and who don't trained? You know, if Act Blue is a big one. Yes, I absolutely agree that Act Blue is a big one, but there are a million other ones out there as well that, you know, I don't want to get so super hyper focused on one organization or another. We need to find all of them. And by declaring Antifa a terrorist organization, this now gives the government a chance to start tracking where the money is coming from. Because I'll tell you right now, even though they don't have cards and meetings, like people, the left is still trying to act like Antifa doesn't even exist. That's absolutely the funniest thing in the world to me. Oh, you know, they're not really an organization, and Antifa is not really a thing. Jerry Nadler was seen saying that, and a bunch of others have as well. When the reality of the fact is, you don't get 200 people to show up at a protest on a Tuesday at 9 a.m. with an hour's notice and not have organizational skills. You don't do that without funding. If it's not a real group, why have other countries banned them? Yeah, no, it's a good question. And look, Unpleasant Blind Guy. Yeah, Act Blue does fund a lot of this. Act Blue is not necessarily the funding. They're the laundering portion of it. They're the ones who get the funding and then give it out, right? So yeah, they're involved, but there's money that goes into them on the back end that we need to figure out. And a lot of people saying Soros, Open Society. Yep, 100%. All of those are organizations that need to be looked at. Antifa is just an idea. If Antifa is just an idea, then I only weigh 270 pounds, 260 pounds now, because the scale says so. It's not that I really weigh it. It's just that I believe I weigh that much, right? That's how that's going to work. It's just all fictional. No, and that's the sad part. And they're going to protect Antifa because they're the useful idiots. I said that before. So many people encouraged Antifa, sometimes just through silence, sometimes actively. The amount of money that went to these organizations. Look, we've walked back so much funding that have gone to protests that Antifa should be a crapshoot. And I'm not going to lie when I say that. Like, it should be so easy to start breaking down who's involved, who's funding. And look, the minions, yeah, they need to go to jail, but we have identified a bunch of them because they get arrested all the time, even if they don't get prosecuted. So they're booked and they're seen. The leadership, the ones who are organizing this and where that money is coming from. And I bet my ass a lot of that money is coming from countries that people would be shocked by. Why would Iran, oh, by the way, the Phasian person is Iranian by birth, why would Iran be funding, say, a group that's about queer rights or queer gun rights? Well, because if you want to sow division and you want a country being torn apart slowly and you want to have everybody at the throats, it's an investment they're worth. And they don't care, but they're like a lot of other these countries. They don't care about the people that they send out to do the work. They just care about the end result. right? Why would Cuba be involved? Well, it's a communist nation. All of these fucking super leftist groups are communist sympathizers, lovers, and wannabes. They really think they can go to Cuba in the last 10 years and think this is the way forward. This is the path that we all should be going down. It's frightening. It shows you how brainwashed our children are and our youth are. It's incredible. So follow that story. I don't want to out their entire story because I don't want to take it from them like that. I don't like doing that. I've already seen another couple people try to pimp this as their own. And I hate that. I absolutely hate when people do that. I think it's just the weakest approach. I'm sharing it. I'm teasing it because I've read through it all. And I think it's worth people understanding. And I think you're going to see more about it. Yeah, it could be Qatar as well. A lot of countries. I think more of this is going to come to the light. And one of the reasons why I appreciate what Data Republican is doing is because if the FBI or DNI, Director of National Intelligence or whatever, starts outing all of this stuff, saying, hey, this is why Antifa is scary as fuck and they're a problem, everyone's going to say, oh, well, you're just a right winger and this is fascism and you're just trying to shut down these freedom, blah, 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 blah. When you have individuals like Data Republican and other people, including some on KLRN, and here when we're outing this or finding stuff or giving out ideas, it's great that it's out before the government gets a hold of it, so they can't just say the government did this. BZ, he's the Boston bastard, harsh and judgmental are baked in. Yeah, a little bit, Ricky. I appreciate that. That's very, very nice of you to say. Orty did say Qatar, Ordnance Packard. Yeah, I mean, look, at this point, I wouldn't be shocked if it wasn't coming from so-called even more friendly countries. The money trail for domestic terrorism, international Gordian knot. I think I said that properly. From Unpleasant Blind Guy in the chat. How the hell am I number one? Rick, I don't know who you're responding to, but look, when I think you, I think like you're more like number two. And the true number one, the Phantom pipes in and says hello. So I get a couple of the stories to wrap up with. I did not intend on spending all of that time. There was a horrific story of a warrant being served in Pennsylvania, where 5 police officers were shot. 3 are in stable condition. 2 others, I believe, have perished, unfortunately. But one of the things in that story, and I actually found this doing a little research through ChatGPT, and they pulled it up out of a local newspaper that said it is the Mexican consulate is being brought there to the scene. So that's something that I think we should definitely pay attention to, because that's a little odd. We've already seen a numerous amount of illegals recently be arrested for different murders all over the country and DUIs. Speaking of illegals, Homeland Security launches Operation Midway Blitz to arrest illegals across Chicago and the surrounding areas. That's been going out of control in a good way. There was that incident late last week where a suspect ran over an ICE agent, and that was sad and horrible. But it was also, I just got what's going on in chat. But this is also why it's unbelievably needed. So in chat, this is why you guys are all jumping back and forth. In chat, for those of you who don't know and you're listening and you're wondering what I'm laughing about, when you go to chat on YouTube, there's 3 places, first, second, and third place, that you can get little crowns for being the most active chat, and you get points per session or whatever. And as I'm reading through chat and I'm trying to pay attention to what I'm trying to cover, I see Rick and the Phantom and BZ all going back and forth saying first. No, now I'm first. Now I'm first. How are you first? And that's why I made the comment about Ricky always being number 2, right, in the chat. I just realized they're commenting to fight to get the crown to be first place. Oh, man. And now, unfortunately, I have to go from that. Oh, God, that's so funny. I have to go to that to this and an update on the story I was just talking about out of Pennsylvania, where a 3rd police officer apparently has perished. So it's 3 cops shot and killed. And that's just absolutely tragic. Yeah. Oh gosh, I hate having to like throwing an update like that up when you're trying to like kind of be upbeat and have a good time is really, really difficult to do. For those who didn't see, Kash Patel was in front of both the Senate and the House, and all the typical idiots on the left did typical idiot on the left things, and Kash lit them up pretty good. Look, I don't think Kash is on the chopping block. There's a lot of things I wish he could do differently. But I do think that Pam Bondi is not long for this world politically. I think she's on her way out of a job real soon. And I'll be interested to see how Kash and Dan operate even after that. I have a feeling that has weighed into a lot of things that was going on. Also, this story did not get a lot of coverage. And this was from last week. 2 men were arrested, both from Pakistan, I believe, for planting an incendiary device or a bomb under a Fox News van that was covering the Charlie Kirk story in Utah. The device did not go off, fortunately, and nobody was injured. But they were both Pakistani. I don't know if they're citizens now. Who tried to blow up a news van, and I believe it was a Fox News van in Utah. So I'll tell you, as somebody said to me today, what the hell is going on in Utah? And I'll be honest, I don't know. It's crazy to me because I spend a lot of time in Utah. People that know me know why. When you go there, you don't see any signs of this in Utah. Salt Lake City has some like super crunchy areas, liberal areas, but you go through Orem and Provo and all these other cities. Yeah, there's some hippiness there. There's some leftists there, but it's not, it's a state where it seems like a lot of shit's happening under the radar. And, you know, somebody brought up to me today, cause you know, the left, when they were talking about the suspect living down in St. George, Utah, or just outside St. George, they turned around and they said, you know, what are the odds of a gay man living with his trans boyfriend in St. George, Utah? Well, just, what was it, 2 years ago? There was a trans kid that killed his parents in St. George, Utah, murdered them both. So I would say the odds are much better than people are thinking. You know, Utah is known for Mormonism. Yeah, you go to Utah and you see the Mormon churches all over the place. But the reality is there's a lot more people than just Mormons in Utah. And it's definitely, I have a feeling a lot more craziness is going to come out of Utah than you think. You remember in Salt Lake City, when they had the No Kings rally back, what was it, in August? They had a leftist shoot somebody else at that event. So Salt Lake City's got some weird shit going on. Talked about Scott Jennings. I know I only got 3 minutes left. Just annihilating and absolutely verbally annihilating Montel Williams. Montel tried to go the same route as the ABC journalist, saying that, you know, there's more love here than there's anything else. And here's this kid who was just in love with somebody else, and he saw them hurting and he wanted to do something about it. Again, trying to humanize the inhuman and soften an assassination. And Scott Jennings absolutely unloaded on all of them. Started reading the text messages. And even the host, and I can never remember her name, the night show that Scott Jennings on, even the host kind of agreed with him, which is very rare and few and far between. But it shows you even on not everybody can be like, yeah, we can't just run with this ridiculousness now. Like, the left is going to have to, at some point, just turn around and say, all right, this kid was a leftist, and they're not going to own the responsibility of creating this, but at least they're going to have to turn around and say, okay, this kid was a leftist, so we're going to have to own this and move on. And we're not going to try to pivot left and right and talk about a love story that is just completely not even it's insulting. It's gruesome. And why, of all people, would CNN drag Montel fucking Williams out of mothballs? Abby Phillips, that's her name. Yeah, even Abby Phillips was just kind of like, I can't really argue with you. To her credit, But why would you drag Montel Williams, who is another person whose whole career was made talking about how, I'm married to a midget and she's sleeping with my mailman who's also Bigfoot type shows, right? Why would you drag him out? He ran a clown show for years, exposing insane, ridiculous relationships and all that, and you're going to drag him out to talk about this suspect and his relationship with the dude who's transitioned to be a woman. So you brought out a clown host. You must think that that's a clown situation. Is that what you're saying by having him on? Because there's no other reason. Montel's not some great investigative political mind. Montel Williams is not like some neuroscientist that can talk about anything like that. No, you dragged him out there and put him on for a reason, because you're trying to get all those people that sit at home all day and watch those sort of programs on your side. And it's absolutely ridiculous. Of all the people, I was just like, was Sally Jesse Raphael not working that day? Was she tied up? What's the deal? You're going to bring Montel. It's just absolutely fucking these news organizations. I don't know how they get any sort of advertisement anymore. Yeah, I used to back in the day, Montel was the shit. I'll give him credit, but that's not what his career turned out to be. I tell everyone too, is remember, Oprah was the same person, right? She was another one who my neighbor is in love with, Loch Ness Monster type thing before she became the Oprah that she is now, right? These people all just did what they did and said what they said to get paid, and they didn't give a shit how ridiculous it was. Donahue was the same way. Ricky Lake to discuss the Fed. Seriously. This isn't serious. That's not a serious person. Lastly, before we go, I'm already late. But if you don't follow King Randall the First and his actual YouTube X's New Emerging King, this gentleman, I want to talk about him earlier because he gets a lot of hate. He's a black dude who goes into communities, oftentimes with kids that have like no fathers, and he has these unbelievable programs where he teaches them how to be young gentlemen. He teaches them how to fix things, how to have confidence in themselves, how to interact in public, how to wear a suit and go to nice events, how to have self-respect. And I've been following him for years on YouTube and stuff like that. He's an awesome guy. Just teaching kids who nobody ever showed them, hey, this is how you change brakes on a car. This is how you be self-sufficient. This is how you act in a way where people will respect you. And the amount of hate he gets is unbelievable. And he posted this one today. And I'm one of those people that when you're having a really shitty week, I go seeking out good stories and I go and look at people I know are good people to kind of boost my spirits. And he posted this to his ex. And I'll read it for you. He said, how long do you plan this is the person who was bitching at him. How long do you plan on whitewashing our children? And he responded, what exactly are they being whitewashed with? And their only response is, I just asked a simple question, cuh. How long are you going to whitewash our kids? He's like, I just asked a simple question too, cuh. What are you being whitewashed? What are these kids being whitewashed with? And then he said some words that I won't repeat, but he was mad that you're turning them into mini conservatives, which kills me. Is that this person who is very, very upset that he's teaching these kids accountability and he's teaching these kids self-respect and self-reliance and how to behave in a way that gets them respect and articulate their differences. He's just, this guy is just fantastic. I really love what he does. I have actually reached out to him for an interview. I'm hoping to get it at some point. But the fact that this person is calling it whitewashing at the end, said you're going to turn them into little conservatives, tells you how a lot of people in this country see the conservative movement. That if you're self-sufficient, that if you can take care of yourself, that you present yourself in a respectful manner, that if you can change your own brakes, that if you can change your own toilets, all the stuff that he's teaching them, and then you can put on a suit and go to a nice event and have a nice dinner and be respectful and be polite and open doors and say sir and ma'am and all that stuff. That's whitewashing them? That's absolutely crazy to me. Absolutely crazy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it. I know I went over. I appreciate it. Hey, please check out all the other shows on SHR Media Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 on the East Coast. You have BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Tuesday and Thursday mornings, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon on the East Coast. You have the Mission Ready Men Show with Big E Friday evenings. Monday and Fridays, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 on the East Coast. You have the Reaver Common Sense, who I think is getting a little bit closer to his return, and we're very, very thankful for that. Of course, Sundays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 on the East Coast. You have the Lost Wanderers Show, the Cosmic Bard, whichever name you want to call him. They're always fantastic, and they were always planned 3 years ago. So please check them out. And then while you're doing that, go look up our friends over at KLRN. You heard some of them in the chat room tonight. Ornis Packer, Ricky was in there. Cosmic Bard was in there. Great shows. Great, awesome people over there. Front Porch Forensics is just a show I listen to all the time. You got to check them out, please. I will be back Monday, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 on the East Coast. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your night.